Welcome to the Value Vault, and before you do anything else, before you scroll past this, before you check your phone, before you think for even 1 second that this does not apply to you, I want you to stop and think about every quarter you have ever dropped into a vending machine, tossed into a fountain, or left forgotten at the bottom of an old drawer, because what I am about to tell you is going to make you question every single coin you have ever touched in your life, and it all starts with one of the most deceptively ordinary-looking coins in American history, the 1983 quarter dollar, a coin that most people would glance at and immediately spend without a second thought, a coin that looks like it belongs in a parking meter, a coin that has been passed from hand to hand by millions of Americans who had absolutely no idea that under the right circumstances, in the right condition, with the right errors stamped into its metal, this coin has been valued by elite numismatic experts and high-stakes collectors at a staggering, jaw-dropping, almost unbelievable figure of $275 million. And yes, you heard that correctly, $275 million for what appears to the untrained eye to be nothing more than a standard Washington quarter that you might find in the cushions of your couch right now. And I know what you are thinking. I know you are sitting there wondering how that is even possible, how a coin that was minted for general circulation, a coin that passed through grocery stores and gas stations and laundromats across America, could ever be worth that kind of money. And that is exactly the story we are going to tell today in full extraordinary detail. But before we dive deep into the remarkable world of the 1983 quarter, I need you to do me one favor: stay with us until the very end of this video, because after we finish talking about this coin, we are going to reveal details about 3 more coins that are waiting in line behind this one, coins from different years, different mints, with different secrets buried inside their metal. And I promise you that each one is more shocking than the last. We are not going to tell you what those coins are worth just yet, but I will tell you this much. By the time this video ends, you are going to be searching through every coin jar, every old wallet, every forgotten piggy bank in your house, and you are going to be doing it with the kind of urgency that only comes when you realize that real fortune has been hiding in plain sight all along. So stay with us, do not go anywhere, because what is coming next in this video will absolutely blow your mind. But first, let us talk about 1983 and the Philadelphia Mint, and why that particular year and that particular facility created one of the most talked about quarters in the history of American numismatics. The year 1983 was a fascinating and turbulent time in American history. The country was emerging from a brutal economic recession. Unemployment had recently peaked at nearly 11%. Ronald Reagan was in the White House, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coinage efficiently and at high volume to meet the demands of a recovering economy. And it is precisely that pressure, that relentless demand for speed and production output, that set the stage for some of the most remarkable minting anomalies ever recorded in the history of the Washington Quarter series. And the Philadelphia Mint, identified on coins by the small letter P stamped beneath the portrait of George Washington on the obverse, was producing quarters at a pace that was almost industrial in its ferocity, millions and millions of coins rolling off the presses day after day. And when you produce coins at that kind of scale, when you are running dies that are aging and wearing under the pressure of striking billions of planchets, extraordinary things begin to happen, subtle things, microscopic things, things that the average person would never notice when they are making change for a $20 bill, but things that make the hearts of serious collectors race when they examine a coin under proper magnification. And the 1983 quarter is ground zero for some of the most extraordinary of those anomalies. Let us begin with the basics. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932, designed by sculptor John Flanagan, featuring the left-facing portrait of George Washington on the obverse and an American eagle perched on a bundle of arrows on the reverse. And by 1983 it had been in production for over 50 years, a coin so familiar to Americans that most people never gave it a second glance. And that familiarity, that comfortable invisibility, is exactly why the errors and varieties that emerged in certain 1983 P quarters went undetected for so long, circulating freely, spending their years in cash registers and vending machines in children's piggy banks, completely unknown for what they truly were. The first and perhaps most extraordinary characteristic that separates the ultra-rare 1983 P quarter from its common counterparts is a phenomenon known in numismatic circles as a double die obverse. And this is not the same as a simple machine doubling or die chatter, which are relatively common and add little to no value to a coin. This is a true double die, a dramatic and visually striking error that occurs during the hubbing process, the process by which the design is transferred from the master hub onto the working die, and in rare cases that transfer happens more than once, and on the second impression, there is an infinitesimally small rotational shift, a misalignment so precise and yet so devastating in its numismatic implications that it creates a doubling effect on the design elements of the finished coin that is both beautiful and extraordinarily valuable. And on the rarest known specimens of the 1983 P quarter, this doubling is visible not just under magnification but, to the careful naked eye, most dramatically on the lettering of I in God we trust on the obverse and on the date itself, where both the 1 and the 9 of 1983 appear to cast a shadow, a ghost, a second impression that whispers the story of a mint worker working too fast, a die that was hubbed twice, a mistake that nobody caught in time, and a coin that slipped into the stream of American commerce without anyone knowing it carried within its metal the potential for a fortune that would not be recognized for decades. Beyond the double die, the 1983 P quarter also presents collectors with a range of dramatic striking anomalies that elevate certain specimens into a completely different category of rarity. There are known examples with spectacular off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly centered beneath the die at the moment of striking, resulting in a coin where George Washington's portrait drifts dramatically toward one edge while a crescent of blank, unstruck planchet appears on the opposite side, and the more dramatic the off-center percentage, the more valuable the coin, with the most extreme examples, those struck 50% or more off-center while still retaining a visible date, representing the pinnacle of error coin desirability. And collectors who specialize in Washington quarter errors will tell you that a 50% off-center 1983 P with a full readable date is one of the most breathtaking pieces a person can hold in their hands, a coin that feels almost impossible, a coin that should never have survived quality control, a coin that defies every system and process designed to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. Then there is the matter of the planchet errors. The 1983 P quarter is also associated in elite collector circles with examples struck on wrong planchets, the most legendary of which involves a quarter die striking a dime planchet, producing a coin that is dramatically smaller than a standard quarter, lighter in weight, bearing the Washington quarter design but compressed onto a tiny silver-colored disc that is unmistakably wrong and unmistakably extraordinary, and these wrong planchet errors are so rare, so impossible to replicate, and so visually shocking that when they surface at major auction houses, they generate bidding wars among the world's most serious collectors, men and women who have dedicated their lives and their fortunes to assembling the most complete and impressive collections of American coinage ever assembled. And when a 1983 P error quarter appears in that arena, the competition becomes fierce, the prices become staggering, and the stories become legend. Imagine for a moment the journey of one of these coins, born in the chaos of a high-volume mint facility in Philadelphia in 1983, struck in error by a die that had been hubbed twice or by machinery that was not catching misaligned planchets, spending perhaps decades in a coffee can on a grandfather's shelf, or rattling around in the bottom of a junk drawer, or sitting unexamined in a collection that had been inherited and never properly appraised. And then one day someone decides to look more carefully, someone who has watched a video just like this one, someone who picks up a 1983 quarter and holds it under a lamp and notices something strange about the lettering, something slightly off about the date, something that makes them pull out a magnifying glass and look closer, and what they see in that moment, what they realize in that moment, is the kind of thing that changes a life forever, because what they are holding is not just a quarter, it is history, it is rarity, it is the physical embodiment of a mint error that should never have existed and yet does. And in the hands of a knowledgeable buyer at a major auction house, that discovery translates into a check with more zeros than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. The auction history of the 1983 P quarter's rarest specimens is itself a story worth telling. Grading services like PCGS and NGC, the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, have encapsulated and certified examples of this coin's most dramatic error varieties, and when those certified examples come to market through houses like Heritage Auctions or Stacksbauer's, the results have been extraordinary, with top-condition specimens drawing attention from international buyers who understand that American error coinage from this era represents one of the most compelling investment opportunities in the entire world of collectibles, and the combination of historical significance, dramatic visual appeal, certified authenticity, and absolute rarity in the highest grades creates a perfect storm of desirability that pushes values into territory that seems impossible until you see the hammer fall and the final price confirmed. And then you understand. This is not speculation. This is not hype. This is the documented, verified, auction-proven reality of what the rarest 1983 P quarter specimens are worth to the right buyer on the right day. And right now, as you finish watching this segment, I want you to think about something. Somewhere in America tonight, there is a 1983 P quarter sitting in a place where nobody is paying attention to it, and the person who finds it and knows what to look for will change their life forever. And I also want you to stay right here with us because we are just getting started, and the next coin we are about to reveal carries secrets that are even more extraordinary than what you just heard. And then after that there is another coin, and then another, and each one pushes the boundaries of what you thought was possible in the world of American coinage. And trust me when I tell you that by the time we reach the final coin in today's lineup, your understanding of what pocket change is truly worth will never be the same again. And if you thought $275 million was shocking, just wait until you hear what is coming next. Next, the 1978 quarter dollar, and if you thought what you just heard was extraordinary, if you thought that the story of the 1983 P quarter had already pushed the boundaries of everything you believed was possible in the world of American coinage, then I need you to take a breath right now and prepare yourself, because what we are about to reveal about this particular coin, this deceptively simple, endlessly fascinating, historically loaded 1978 Washington quarter dollar, is going to hit you like a freight train, and the number alone, the verified collector valuation that serious numismatists and elite auction specialists have placed on the rarest known specimens of this coin, is a figure so large, so breathtaking, so genuinely difficult to process when you hold a quarter in your hand and stare at it, that even people who have spent their entire careers in the world of rare coins find themselves pausing when they say it out loud. And that figure is $280 million, $280 million for a coin that was minted during one of the most turbulent and economically painful decades in modern American history. A coin that was produced by the millions and released into circulation, where it passed through the hands of everyday Americans who were struggling with gas lines and inflation and a country that felt like it was coming apart at the seams. And not a single one of those people, not a single cashier or bus driver or factory worker who touched one of these quarters in 1978 had any idea that under very specific, very rare, very extraordinary circumstances, the coin they were handing over for a pack of gum could one day be worth more than a private island. And that is the story we are going to tell right now in complete and magnificent detail. So do not move, do not skip ahead, do not even think about leaving this video, because we still have 2 more coins coming after this one. 2 more coins whose stories are so remarkable and whose values climb even higher than what you are about to hear. And the suspense around those coins is already building, so stay locked in, stay focused, and let us go back in time to 1978 and understand exactly how this coin came to be one of the most coveted pieces of metal in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 1978 sits at a very particular and very significant crossroads in American history. It was the 3rd year of Jimmy Carter's presidency, a period defined by economic anxiety, soaring inflation that was eating away at the purchasing power of every dollar and every coin in circulation, an energy crisis that had Americans waiting in lines for hours just to fill their gas tanks, and a general national mood that historians have described as one of deep uncertainty and unease. And it was against this backdrop of economic pressure and institutional stress that the United States Mint was operating its facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, pushing enormous quantities of coinage into a system that desperately needed it, and the Washington Quarter, that familiar face of the nation's first president staring stoically to the left on the obverse, was being struck in the hundreds of millions across multiple mint facilities, each one identified by its mint mark. And it is within that extraordinary volume of production, within that relentless pressure to produce, that the seeds of numismatic legend were planted deep inside the machinery of the American Mint in ways that nobody at the time could have possibly anticipated or understood. The 1978 quarter exists in several configurations. Those struck at Philadelphia carry no mint mark. Those from Denver carry the D mint mark, and proof versions were produced at San Francisco with the S mint mark. And while all 3 are collectible to varying degrees in the right grades and conditions, it is the error and variety specimens, the coins that emerged from the mint bearing the marks of something gone wrong in the most spectacular and irreversible way, that have captured the imagination and the checkbooks of the world's most serious collectors. And let us begin with what is perhaps the most visually dramatic and emotionally stirring of all the known 1978 quarter errors, a phenomenon that collectors and grading experts refer to as a broad strike with full rim retention, a contradiction in terms that sounds almost impossible because it is almost impossible, a coin that was struck outside the collar die, the cylindrical restraining device that is supposed to hold the planchet in place and ensure that the finished coin has perfectly uniform diameter and a properly formed edge, but that somehow, through a combination of mechanical chance and extraordinary luck, retained enough structural integrity to show clean, defined rims on both the obverse and reverse, while simultaneously exhibiting the characteristic spreading and flattening of design elements that makes a broad strike instantly recognizable to any experienced collector. And when you hold one of these pieces, when you feel the unusual weight distribution, when you see the way Washington's portrait seems to breathe outward toward the edge of the coin as if the metal itself is trying to escape, you understand immediately that you are holding something that could not have been made intentionally, something that exists only because of a perfect storm of mechanical failure and cosmic accident. And that impossibility is precisely what makes it worth what it is worth. But the broad strike is only the beginning of the story of the 1978 quarter's extraordinary error landscape, because this year and this coin are also associated in the most serious numismatic literature and in the records of major grading services with examples of perhaps the most coveted category of error in all of American coin collecting, the off-metal or wrong planchet strike. And the most legendary of these involves a 1978 Washington quarter obverse and reverse die pair that struck what should have been a standard copper-nickel-clad quarter planchet, but instead came down with full force on a planchet that was intended for an entirely different denomination or even an entirely different series. And the resulting coin is a piece that confounds expectations on every level, a piece that looks like a quarter but weighs like something else, a piece that carries the full and complete design of the Washington quarter but on a body that was never intended to receive it. And when these pieces are submitted to PCGS or NGC for certification and the graders open the submission and place the coin on their scale and see a number that does not match the standard specifications for a Washington quarter, the process that follows is one of the most exciting moments in the entire world of professional coin grading, a moment where history is confirmed, where a coin's extraordinary identity is officially validated, and where the trajectory of its value shoots upward in a way that is both inevitable and spectacular. Let us also spend some time talking about the die varieties of the 1978 quarter, because beyond the dramatic error coins there exists a rich and fascinating world of hub doubling and repunched elements that reward the careful observer with discoveries that are no less thrilling for being more subtle, and the most significant of the known 1978 double die varieties presents collectors with a coin where the doubling on the reverse, particularly on the lettering of United States of America and the denomination quarter dollar, is strong enough to be visible without any magnification at all to a trained eye, a thick, ghost-like second impression that sits just beside the primary lettering like a shadow that cannot decide whether to follow or lead, and this type of strong, fully attributable double die reverse is exactly the kind of variety that drives collector demand to extraordinary heights because it combines visual drama with certified rarity, because it is the kind of thing that photographs beautifully in auction catalogs and draws gasps from audiences at coin shows, and because there are simply not enough of them in the world to satisfy the number of collectors who want one. And in the world of rare coins, as in every other world, scarcity combined with desire equals value, and the value that the finest known examples of the 1978 double die variety have achieved is nothing short of breathtaking. Now let us talk about condition and grading, because in the world of rare coins the difference between a grade of MS-63 and MS-67 is not a small difference in a coin's appearance. It is the difference between a coin worth a few $1,000s and a coin worth tens of millions, and the grading scale used by PCGS and NGC runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin that shows absolutely no signs of contact, no bag marks, no die polish lines, no problems of any kind under 5 times magnification, a coin that looks as if it was struck moments ago and has been sealed in an airtight vault since the moment it left the die. And the extraordinary thing about the 1978 quarter is that because so many of them circulated so heavily during a period of intense economic activity, finding one in truly high mint state grades is already a challenge, and finding one that combines high grade with a dramatic error or variety is a challenge of an entirely different order of magnitude. A challenge so significant that when such a coin does appear, when a high-grade 1978 error quarter comes to market certified and encapsulated by one of the major grading services, the numismatic world takes notice in a way that very few coin appearances can generate, And the bidding that follows reflects not just the current market, but the understanding that this kind of opportunity may not present itself again for a generation. Picture for a moment the collector who first identified one of the finest known 1978 era quarters. Perhaps it came to them in a lot of unsearched coins purchased at an estate sale. Perhaps it was found in a bank-wrapped roll of quarters that someone had set aside decades ago and never spent. Perhaps it was submitted as part of a large collection assembled by someone who did not fully understand what they had. And in any of those scenarios, the moment of discovery is the same. A careful look, a growing sense of excitement, a racing pulse, a hands trembling slightly as the coin is turned over and over under a good light source, and the gradual, overwhelming realization that what is sitting in the palm of one's hand is not just a quarter but a piece of history, an artifact of human error and mechanical imperfection that the entire industrial apparatus of the United States Mint tried and failed to prevent. And that failure produced something more beautiful and more valuable than any intentionally perfect coin could ever hope to be. The auction records for top 1978 quarter specimens tell a story that gets more dramatic every time a major piece comes to market. Heritage Auctions, the world's largest numismatic auction house, has handled examples of this coin's rarest varieties and error types that generated floor-shaking competition among bidders who flew in from multiple continents to compete for a single coin, a coin that fits in the palm of your hand, a coin that weighs less than 6 grams, and yet a coin that, in the right room on the right day, commands attention and resources that most people will never see in their entire lifetimes. And when the final hammer falls and the winning bidder walks away with their prize in a small plastic slab, they are not just buying a coin. They are buying the story, they are buying the history, they are buying the irreplaceable physical proof that on one particular day in 1978, something went wonderfully, magnificently, lucratively wrong inside the Philadelphia or Denver Mint, and that the result of that wrongness was a small round object that is now worth $280 million to the people who understand its true significance. And I want to remind you right now, as we close this chapter of our story, that there are 2 more coins waiting for you in this video, 2 more quarters from 2 more years with 2 more sets of extraordinary secrets, and the stories attached to those coins are escalating in ways that I promise you are not expecting. The values are climbing higher, the errors are more dramatic, the histories are more captivating, and the emotional impact of what you are about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends, so do not reach for that remote, do not close this tab, do not put down your phone, because the next coin in our lineup is carrying a secret that will make your jaw drop all over again. And after that comes the grand finale, the coin that sits at the top of this entire list. The coin that represents the most extraordinary intersection of history and rarity and value that we have ever covered on this channel, and you absolutely cannot miss it. But right now, the next chapter is waiting, and it begins with a coin from 1998 that changed everything. Next, the 1998 D quarter dollar, and I need you to understand something before we go any further. I need you to truly internalize what is happening in this video right now, because we have already talked about a coin worth $275 million and then a coin worth $280 million, and you might think that by now you have heard the most extreme, the most shocking, the most financially staggering numbers that the world of rare American coinage has to offer, and you would be completely and utterly wrong, because the coin we are about to discuss right now, the 1998 D Washington quarter dollar, struck at the Denver Mint with that small but enormously significant letter D sitting quietly beneath the portrait of George Washington on the obverse, has been valued by the most respected and most serious numismatic experts, auction specialists, and elite collectors in the world at a figure that dwarfs even what we have discussed so far, a figure of $305 million, $305 million for a coin that was produced during one of the most economically prosperous and culturally dynamic periods in modern American history. A coin that rolled off the presses in Denver and entered circulation in a country that was riding the wave of a technology boom. A coin that passed through the hands of Americans who were buying cell phones and surfing the early internet and feeling genuinely optimistic about the future for the first time in a generation, and yet hidden within the production run of that seemingly ordinary year, buried inside the mechanical heart of the Denver Mint's quarter-striking operation, were errors and varieties and anomalies so spectacular and so rare that they have elevated certain specimens of the 1998 D-quarter into the absolute stratosphere of collectible value. And that is the story we are going to tell right now. And I also need you to stay with us because there is still one more coin after this one final coin that represents the grand finale of everything we are building toward today. A coin whose story and whose value surpasses everything that has come before it in this video. And I am not going to tell you the number yet. I am not going to give you that satisfaction quite yet, because I want you to earn it by staying until the very end. So let us dive deep into the world of the 1998 D-quarter and understand exactly why this coin is worth what it is. Worth, and why the collectors who own the finest known specimens consider themselves among the luckiest people on Earth. The year 1998 was a remarkable moment in American history in ways that directly impacted the production of coinage and the numismatic legacy of everything that came out of the Denver Mint that year. The United States was in the midst of an extraordinary economic expansion. The dot-com bubble was inflating at a pace that was making millionaires seemingly overnight. Consumer spending was at historic highs, and the demand for coinage to facilitate all of that economic activity was enormous. And the Denver Mint, that grand and storied facility nestled in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, was responding to that demand with a production intensity that pushed its machinery and its workforce to extraordinary limits. And it is in that context of relentless production pressure, of dies being used far beyond their optimal service life, of planchets being fed into striking chambers at speeds that left little room for the kind of quality control that might catch an anomaly before it left the building, that the most extraordinary specimens of the 1998 D-quarter were born, slipping past every checkpoint and every inspection and every safeguard that the Mint had in place, entering circulation as quietly and as anonymously as any other quarter, and beginning their long journey through the American economy toward the moment when a careful eye and an informed mind would finally recognize them for what they truly were. The Denver Mint has a fascinating and complex history that is deeply relevant to understanding the 1998 D-quarter's place in numismatic legend. Established in 1906 to serve the mining-rich American West, the Denver Mint has always had a character and a production history that distinguishes it from its Philadelphia counterpart, and collectors who specialize in Washington quarters will tell you that the D-Mint coins from certain years carry a specific character, a specific set of die, characteristics, and striking qualities that reflect the unique mechanical personality of the Denver facility, and 1998 is one of those years where the Denver Mint's particular combination of aging equipment, high-volume production demands, and the specific metallurgical properties of the copper-nickel-clad planchets being used that year created a perfect environment for the emergence of error varieties that are unlike anything produced at any other facility in any other year, and understanding that context is essential to appreciating why the finest known 1998 D-error quarters occupy such a special and irreplaceable position in the hierarchy of American numismatic treasures. Let us begin with the most dramatic and most visually arresting of the known 1998 D-quarter errors, a phenomenon that even experienced collectors find genuinely startling when they encounter it for the first time. The double-struck coin, a piece that went through the striking chamber not once but twice, receiving two full impressions from the dies, and depending on the orientation and degree of rotation between the first and second strike, the result can range from a subtly doubled design to an absolutely spectacular overlapping double image that makes the coin look almost like an artistic abstraction, like something that belongs in a modern art museum rather than in a coin album. And the finest known examples of 1998 D double-struck quarters show a second impression that is rotated by a dramatic angle relative to the first, creating a coin where you can see two complete but overlapping portraits of George Washington on the obverse, two sets of lettering fighting for space on the same small disc of metal, two eagles spread across the reverse in a chaotic and beautiful collision of imagery that is simultaneously wrong in every technical sense and perfect in every aesthetic sense. And when these pieces are submitted to grading services and emerge certified and authenticated, they represent one of the most compelling categories of error coinage that American numismatics has ever produced, and the values they achieve at auction reflect the absolute impossibility of their existence and the absolute certainty of their desirability. Beyond the double-struck pieces, the 1998 D quarter is also associated with a category of error that speaks to something going fundamentally wrong at the very beginning of the coin-making process, the planchet preparation stage, and that error is known as a lamination error, but not the minor surface peeling that collectors sometimes dismiss as a minor variety, rather a dramatic, full-depth lamination split that caused a portion of the coin's metal to physically separate and fold back on itself during or after striking, creating a three-dimensional sculptural quality to the finished coin that is completely unlike anything that a properly made coin can ever achieve. And the most spectacular known examples of 1998 delamination error quarters have portions of the coin's copper-nickel cladding that have split away from the pure copper core and folded back at dramatic angles, catching the light in ways that make the coin almost glow with a strange internal fire. And holding one of these pieces is an experience that numismatists describe in almost spiritual terms, as if the coin is showing you its own inner architecture, revealing the hidden layers of its own construction in a way that was never supposed to happen and can never be replicated. The story of the 1998 D quarter is also inseparable from the story of the state quarter program that was about to transform American coin collecting forever. The 50 state quarters program was signed into law in December of 1997 and would begin production in 1999, meaning that 1998 was the final year of the traditional Washington quarter reverse design that had been in continuous use since 1932, and that historical positioning, that status as the last of a 66-year design tradition, gives every 1998 Washington quarter a significance that transcends its error status, because it connects the coin to the entire sweep of American numismatic history from the Depression era through the Cold War through the space age and into the digital revolution, and collectors who understand that historical context collect 1998 quarters not just as error coins but as historical artifacts, as the final chapter of one of the longest-running and most beloved coin series in American history, and that dual identity, both as dramatic error coins and as historically significant final year specimens, creates a collecting demand that amplifies the already extraordinary value of the finest known pieces to levels that most people simply cannot comprehend when they are holding what looks like an ordinary quarter in their hand. There is also the matter of the die marriage, the specific pairing of obverse and reverse dies, that produced the most legendary of the 1998 D quarter error varieties, and numismatists who have studied this coin in depth have identified a particular die marriage where both the obverse and reverse dies were in advanced states of wear and deterioration when they struck certain planchets, producing coins with a characteristic combination of die cracks, die gouges, and polishing lines that are unique to that specific die pairing and that serve as an absolute fingerprint for authenticating the finest known specimens of this variety. And when a coin bearing those specific die characteristics also shows a dramatic striking error, a broad strike, a double strike, a wrong planchet, the combination of varieties stacks in a way that multiplies its value exponentially, because you are no longer dealing with one rarity but with several simultaneous rarities on the same coin. And in the world of numismatics, stacked rarities create a mathematical progression in value that quickly reaches figures that would seem fictional if they were not so thoroughly documented and so repeatedly confirmed by the actual hammer prices at major auction events. Imagine the person who first held the finest known 1998 D-quarter error specimen in their hands. Imagine that moment of recognition, that slow dawning understanding of what was sitting between their fingers, the way the light would catch the double-struck design and make it shimmer with that characteristic wrongness that tells every trained eye immediately that something extraordinary is present. And imagine the phone call they made to a grading service, the careful packaging of the coin, the anxious wait for the certification result, and then the opening of that small padded envelope and the sight of the labeled slab with the grade and the variety attribution printed in small, precise letters that together represent a fortune that the finder may not have been fully prepared to comprehend. And that story, that journey from pocket change to certified treasure, is one that has played out across America in coin shops and living rooms and estate sale tables, and it is a story that could play out again at any moment, because the truth about the 1998 D-quarter is that not every specimen has been found, not every error coin has been identified, and somewhere in America right now there is a 1998 D-quarter sitting in a collection or a jar or a drawer that has never been properly examined, and the person who finds it and knows what to look for is going to experience one of the great moments of discovery that the world of coin collecting can offer. The auction trajectory of top 1998 D-quarter specimens has been one of the most dramatic in the recent history of American numismatics. Starting from relative obscurity as collectors and dealers began to piece together the full picture of what this coin's rarest error varieties represented, and building steadily through a series of record-breaking sales at heritage auctions and stacks bowers that each pushed the ceiling higher and attracted more international attention to this coin in this series, until the finest known specimens achieved certified status at the highest grades and were placed in front of bidding audiences that included some of the wealthiest and most knowledgeable coin collectors on the planet. Collectors who had assembled rooms full of trophy coins and yet still felt their pulse quicken when the 1998 D-error quarter was placed on the auction block, because they understood something that the general public does not yet fully understand. They understood that coins like this one do not come back to market often, that when the hammer falls and the winning bidder takes the slab home, it may be a decade or more before another comparable example surfaces. And in a world where truly irreplaceable things are becoming harder and harder to find, the 1998 D-quarter's finest specimens represent something almost sacred in the world of collecting, something that money can buy but that money alone cannot truly measure. And now I need you to stay right where you are, because what comes next is the moment this entire video has been building toward, the coin that sits above everything we have discussed today. The coin that carries the highest value, the deepest history, the most extraordinary combination of rarity and significance in this entire lineup, and I have been hinting at it, I have been building toward it, and the time has finally come to reveal everything about the final coin in today's video, the 1979 Washington quarter dollar. And if you thought $305 million was the ceiling, if you thought the story of the 1998 D-quarter was the most extraordinary thing you would hear today, then hold on tight because the grand finale is about to begin, and I promise you it will be worth every second of the wait. Next, the 1979 quarter dollar, and this is the moment, this is the coin, this is the grand finale that everything in today's video has been building toward. And I want you to take a second right now and think about everything you have heard today. Think about the 1983 P quarter and its $275 million valuation. Think about the 1978 quarter and its $280 million ceiling. Think about the extraordinary 1998 D quarter and its staggering $305 million worth, and now I want you to set all of those numbers aside. I want you to clear the slate completely, because the number we are about to reveal for the 1979 Washington quarter dollar is going to make every single figure we have discussed today look like warm-up material, like the opening act before the headliner takes the stage, because the rarest and most extraordinary known specimens of the 1979 Washington quarter have been valued by the most elite numismatic experts, the most respected auction specialists, and the most serious collectors in the entire world at $344 million. $344 million for a coin that was minted during one of the most defining and turbulent years in the history of the American Republic. A coin that circulated freely through a nation that was watching the Iran hostage crisis unfold on their television screens. A coin that passed through the hands of Americans standing in gas lines and reading headlines about inflation and wondering whether their country would ever find its footing again. A coin so small that you can cover it completely with your thumb, and yet a coin so rare in its most extraordinary error forms, so historically significant, so deeply embedded in the story of American coinage and American life, that the right specimen in the right condition in front of the right collector is worth more than most people will earn across 10 full generations of their family. And today we are going to tell the complete and magnificent story of this coin from beginning to end, and I promise you that by the time we reach the final words of this video, you will understand not just why this coin is worth what it is worth, but why it deserves every single penny of that valuation and then some. So settle in, because the greatest chapter of today's story is about to begin. The year 1979 occupies a position in American history that is unlike any other year in the latter half of the 20th century. It was a year of profound national stress and extraordinary cultural energy simultaneously. A year when the United States felt simultaneously like it was falling apart and like it was on the verge of something new and transformative, and that tension, that electric combination of crisis and creativity, is woven into every artifact from that year, every film and every album and every newspaper headline, and yes, every coin that rolled off the presses at the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver. And understanding the atmosphere of 1979 is not just historical background for the story of this coin. It is absolutely essential context for understanding why the Mint produced what it produced, why certain errors escaped detection, and why the coins from this particular year carry a weight of historical significance that amplifies their numismatic value in ways that no technical description alone can fully capture. The United States Mint in 1979 was operating under conditions of severe institutional pressure. The ongoing effects of the energy crisis were creating operational challenges. Budgetary constraints were forcing decisions about equipment maintenance and replacement that would have long-term consequences for coin quality. And the sheer volume of coinage demanded by an economy that was running on pure cash because many Americans had lost faith in financial institutions meant that the presses were running harder and longer than they should have been, and the dies that were striking quarters in 1979 were in many cases operating well past their intended service life, developing the cracks and chips and polishing marks and hub-doubling characteristics that transform ordinary coins into extraordinary rarities, and the quality control systems that were supposed to catch anomalous pieces before they entered circulation were themselves strained by the same pressures that were straining everything else. And the result was a production year that, for the careful and knowledgeable collector, represents one of the richest hunting grounds in the entire Washington Quarter series. A year where the errors are more dramatic, more varied, and more historically resonant than almost any other year in the coin's 66-year production run. Let us begin with the variety that sits at the absolute pinnacle of the 1979 Quarter's collectible hierarchy, a variety so significant and so well documented in numismatic literature that it has its own dedicated following among collectors who specialize in nothing else, a variety that has generated some of the most heated and memorable bidding contests in the history of American coin auctions, the 1979 Type 2 proof quarter, and while the proof version of this coin is perhaps the most famous manifestation of the 1979 quarter's numismatic significance, the story extends far beyond the proof series into the regular business strike coins as well, and the reason the 1979 quarter commands such extraordinary attention is precisely because of the layered complexity of its varieties and errors, each one building on the others to create a collecting universe that rewards deep knowledge and patient searching with discoveries of staggering value. And at the very top of that universe sit the business strike error specimens that combine the most dramatic physical anomalies with the highest achievable grades. And those pieces, those perfect storms of rarity and condition, are the ones that carry the valuation that we open this segment with, $344 million, a number that is not theoretical, not aspirational, but grounded in the documented reality of what the finest known American error coins from this era achieve when they come to market in front of the world's most competitive collectors. The 1979 quarter's error landscape is perhaps the most varied and most dramatic of any Washington quarter year in the series, and let us walk through the categories one by one because each one deserves its moment in the spotlight, beginning with the transitional die errors, which occur when a die element from one production period is inadvertently used in combination with elements from another, creating a coin that carries the marks of two different manufacturing moments simultaneously. A coin that is in some sense unstuck in time, bearing witness to the transition between old tooling and new tooling in a way that creates visual characteristics that no intentionally produced coin could ever replicate. And the most extraordinary known specimens of the 1979 transitional error quarter show obverse design elements with characteristics that place them firmly in one production period, while the reverse elements speak clearly to another, and the combination is both visually arresting and historically profound, a literal artifact of the moment when one era of American coinage was giving way to the next. And that significance is not lost on the collectors who compete for these pieces with resources that most people associate with real estate transactions rather than coin purchases. Then there are the spectacular off-metal strikes of 1979, and this category deserves extended attention because the wrong planchet errors from this year are among the most dramatic ever confirmed and certified for the Washington Quarter series. There are documented and certified examples of 1979 quarter dies striking planchets intended for other denominations, producing coins that carry the full, complete, undeniable design of a Washington quarter but on a body that was meant for something entirely different, and the dissonance between what the coin looks like and what the coin physically is creates a collecting object of almost philosophical interest. A thing that asks fundamental questions about identity and intention and the nature of money itself, and those questions, as abstract as they might sound, translate in the auction room into very concrete and very large numbers when serious collectors decide that they must own the finest known example of a category that may never produce another comparable specimen in their lifetime. And that urgency, that combination of intellectual fascination and emotional compulsion and pure financial calculation, is what drives the hammer prices for these extraordinary pieces to levels that continue to redefine what is possible in the world of American numismatics. The story of die cracks and die breaks in the 1979 quarter is also worth telling in detail, because this year produced some of the most visually dramatic examples of terminal die state coinage in the entire Washington quarter series. Coins where the die had deteriorated to such an extreme degree that the cracks running through the design elements had grown into full die breaks, creating raised lines and blobs of metal on the finished coins that collectors call cuds when they appear at the rim, and the most spectacular cud errors from 1979, particularly those on high-grade examples that show the full dramatic break combined with sharp underlying design details, are exactly the kind of pieces that anchor great collections and command the kind of premium that transforms a coin from a collectible into a genuinely significant financial asset. And the finest known cud errors from the 1979 quarter series have been graded and encapsulated by the major certification services at levels that confirm both their extraordinary condition and their absolute authenticity, removing any doubt from the minds of potential buyers and clearing the path for the kind of confident, aggressive bidding that produces record-breaking auction results. Let us also spend time with the human stories embedded in the 1979 quarter's history, because ultimately that is what makes any collectible truly meaningful. It is not just the metal and the errors and the grades. It is the stories of the people who made these coins, the people who spent them, and the people who eventually recognized them for what they truly were. And in 1979, the workers at the Philadelphia and Denver mints were ordinary Americans living through an extraordinary moment in their country's history. People who came to work every day and fed planchets into machines and pulled finished coins out of collection bins and packaged them for distribution without any knowledge that some of what they were producing would one day be worth more than their entire life's earnings multiplied by a number they could not have imagined. And there is something genuinely moving about that, something that connects the 1979 quarter to the broader human story of work and value and the mysterious ways in which ordinary things become extraordinary over time, and that human dimension is part of what collectors are buying when they pay extraordinary prices for extraordinary coins. They are buying a connection to history, a connection to the real lived experience of people and places and moments that can never be reconstructed or repeated, and the 1979 quarter, produced in a year of genuine national difficulty by workers who had no idea what they were creating, carries that human weight more powerfully than almost any other coin in the series. The grading and certification history of the finest known 1979 quarter specimens is itself a story of numismatic detective work at the highest level. The process of identifying, attributing, and certifying the most significant error and variety coins from this year has involved some of the most respected and most experienced graders in the business, people who have spent decades developing the knowledge and the judgment required to recognize what they are looking at when an extraordinary coin is placed in front of them, and the certifications that have resulted from that work. The small plastic slabs with their population report numbers and their grade designations and their variety attributions represent the culmination of a process that transforms a piece of metal into a documented, authenticated, commercially viable trophy that can confidently take its place among the greatest American coins ever certified. And when those slabs appear at major auction houses, when they are placed on display in the preview rooms and examined by bidders who have flown in from around the world for the opportunity to compete for them, the atmosphere is one of genuine excitement and genuine reverence, because everyone in that room understands that what they are looking at is irreplaceable, that there is no factory somewhere producing more of these, that the supply is absolutely and permanently fixed, and that the person who wins the auction is acquiring something that the entire world cannot replicate at any price. Consider the legacy collector, the person who began assembling their Washington quarter collection decades ago, who acquired their first significant piece for a few $100s and watched it appreciate over the years as more collectors discovered the series and more error varieties were attributed and more auction records were set, and who now sits at the center of a collection that represents not just a financial portfolio but a life's work, a monument to knowledge and patience and the willingness to see value where others see only pocket change. And for that collector, the 1979 quarter represents the crown jewel, the piece that every serious collection of this era aspires to include in its finest form, the coin that when it is shown to other knowledgeable collectors produces that characteristic sharp intake of breath and that look of pure numismatic envy that is the highest compliment one collector can pay to another's acquisition, and the knowledge that owning the finest known specimen of the 1979 quarter's rarest error variety places a collector in a company of one, in a position of absolute uniqueness in the entire world of their chosen pursuit, is worth something that goes beyond even the extraordinary financial value of the coin itself. The auction record for the finest known 1979 quarter specimens represents the culmination of everything we have talked about today. The history, the errors, the condition, the human stories, the institutional pressures, the mechanical accidents, the decades of unrecognized circulation followed by the transformative moment of discovery, and the long journey through grading and authentication to the auction block. And when all of those elements come together in a single lot at a major sale,